Hello, my name is Meowkaiser. I am somebody that has done a lot of strategy games in my time. I have competed in Hearthstone, I have competed in Magic the Gathering, Vanguard, although Vanguard kind of hurts my credibility because Vanguard's not a very complex game, but regardless. I have played Ascension 20 Slay the Spire, I have played competitive StarCraft Brood War, and I am top 20 in North America currently for Immortal Soul Black Survival, and I was top 10 in the world last season. So, that's a little bit of my credibility. So, first thing about how I approach it is that you have to pay attention to where your decision trees are. And I'm going to be using Immortal Soul Black Survival as my example because my audience knows this. But a lot of it is through individual questions. The first decision is usually, am I choosing to finish my armor over my weapon or the other way around? And I do not always make the same decision here. I am always factoring in many different variables. How late into the game is it? Am I able to secure the areas that I need? Do I deal enough damage to secure Bear Gorilla? Another thing that I might consider is I might actually ditch both of these to prioritize getting some food or stamina. Stamina so I don't slow down. Food so that I can stay alive in the game and continue playing. Right? There's a lot of decision trees in any game that you play. It's the reason why, if you have ever played Magic the Gathering, for example, the amount of decision trees a red deck would have is significantly smaller than the amount of decisions that a control deck would have. Control deck has multiple decisions that they have to make per turn, where they have to decide whether to counterspell something, float mana. They decide whether they want to tap out and just let their opponents do whatever they want, or if they want to spend their mana card drawing. There's a lot of directions and decisions to make, and because of this, it is actually the reason why if you ever ask a professional Magic the Gathering player whether or not they have played the game correctly, they will always tell you, no, they could have done something better. And they're generally okay with that. We'll cover that a little bit more in the future. So when I approach a new strategy game, one of the first steps that I take is I try to simplify the learning process. I will do whatever it takes. For example, I'll probably not learn every character in the game. I'll focus on basic concepts. This can be applied for chess, for example. I'm not going to learn every single opening, right? I don't need to. I'll learn like an opening for white, an opening for black, and then I'll learn a lot of the different decision trees that would happen from there, right? So like if I were to open with King's Fianchetto on white, I'll be paying attention to the many different responses black could have, right? So there's other ways that you can simplify the learning process. You can go and watch other top level players to have an idea of good ways to approach the game, to see what their knowledge works and how my conventional knowledge pairs up to that. And let's also talk about luck and RNG. A lot of strategy games have an element of randomness to it. It makes it exciting to watch. Magic the Gathering, which is considered one of the most competitive card games out there, has a good deal of randomness as well. There's a lot you can't really do about it. It is okay to recognize that sometimes you get unlucky. That doesn't mean you couldn't win that game. That doesn't mean the luck was the only reason why I lost. I think a really good example of this was a game I played yesterday where what was it? I just had like a really bad start, right? And I was getting like seriously unlucky, and I still played to try to win. I believe I placed second that game, but I still, even like despite my bad luck, I felt like I could have won that game. You know, just like minor improvements. Nobody plays a game 100% perfectly, but basically you want to get into the habit of not blaming bad luck as much as you can. The less you blame bad luck and the more you try to see what you could have done better, the faster you'll get better. The Yejin one at the lighthouse start, I mean, that one was really bad. Like, I just straight up died. Understanding percentages. This one's really important if you play a Battle Royale game. This happens in Eternal Return, and this happens in Immortal Soul Black Survival. In Battle Royale games, you're going to lose a lot. A good win percentage is based on the total number of players versus the total number of winners. In the case of Black Survival, it's 10 players, 1 winner. This means a good win rate is 1 divided by 10, 10%. And a good win rate has a little bit more leniency the better your opponents are. And a lot of Battle Royale games are not able to throw you into a lobby that has everyone that's the same skill level as you. Most of the time, they're going to throw in like 2 or 3 players that are really good. Music's gradually getting louder. There's nothing I can... there we go. Make it super quiet. Anyways. Super Mecha Champion has bot-filled lobbies. What was I saying? I just completely forgot. Oh yeah, so in the case of games like this, a lot of people will just assume that it's not friendly to new players because they can't win. Clearly, they have never played some of competitive fighting games where you're probably not going to be able to win your first ever online game until like a good 3-4 months of playing the game. This is very, very normal. And what makes a good win rate changes depending on how skillful you are versus the general lobby that you're up against. So in my case, because I am one of the top players, the way I have to evaluate win percentages are very different than the way you do.
Wanted to resub, but I'm listening intently, I promise.
Thanks so much, Blaze Plays. I'm actually surprised I had the alert box hidden, but I just fixed that. Thanks so much for the support, dude. I'm always forgetting every time I see. Ah! Okay, I remember now. So my personal win rate is really high. I average around 60%. And so the way that I gauge whether a win rate is good and whether I am doing well is based on how close to 60% it is. If it's like significantly lower than 60%, I have to ask myself, well, why am I losing on this character so much, right? In general, I should expect to be able to outplay most of my opponents, even on bad characters, just due to the thousands upon thousands of hours I have sunk into the game, and the fact that my ranking attests to the fact that I am one of the best players in North America. I should be stomping most of my opponents. And even if your like win rate is like 2%, right? Like a lot of times your win rate doesn't take into the account like the first few games you had in the season before, you know, you really learned the game. And so a lot of these times these percentages are a little bit counterproductive, and it's a little bit better to not try to analyze the big picture unless you're trying to figure out what's working for you and what's not. But understanding these percentages helps a lot. Practicing winning does not mean you're improving. Practicing the winning is playing a strategy that you know you can win with the most, but this does not mean you're improving. Experimenting with new strategies and learning from it helps you find strategies that have higher win rates. And even if you lose, understanding why you lost and why it was less effective strategy helps a ton. If you watch me play, you'll notice that I don't always pick the same character. I will pick multiple different characters. And part of the reason is because I'm also making content for YouTube. People would get bored if I always played the same character, right? But like, I could just pick gun every single game, right? A gun character. Let's just say Aya, for example. Aya is agreed upon to be one of the strongest characters in the meta right now. I could always play her non-stop, and I could probably hit like the #1 spots after playing a bunch of games. The thing about doing that is that you're missing out on a lot of aspects of the game, and if the meta shifts off of that character, right, you'll have a harder time. You know, these things happen. If you watch, like, Faker, for example, Faker is constantly picking new characters, and he's always limit testing, trying to see what he can do. He'll pick characters that are conventionally bad, and he'll see what he can do with it, right? And this is how more powerful strategies get discovered. I think a good example of this was the double rubber start that I started doing. This was something that's happened when there was, like, a change where, like, rubber can be done to make a covered agent uniform, and I theory crafted a double rubber start, which it turns out you could apply to a lot, and I mean a lot of a lot of different weapon types. I could apply it to hand, I could apply it to bow, and you see it in a lot of my games. I go double rubber. We are never correct, and ego is punished. Understanding this is important. Strategy guides in particular, especially the ones that I write, are written in a way that the strategy is the definite and correct strategy. This is not true. I write it this way because it is easier to explain somebody the strategy that I have found that works, but it is never definite. It is never 100% the correct way to play the game. And I am okay with that. I am okay that I am always wrong. There are way too many decision trees in Black Survival to get the correct decision. Right? You're just not going to be able to do it. You're going to get a mostly correct decision, but you will not get the definitively correct decision. That's fine. You look at things like chess, right? In chess, there's this kind of like idea that when we watch computers play the game that are significantly better than humans, and they make decisions that go against conventional wisdom, a lot of top-level chess players will say, oh, don't play like the computer does. You know, humans don't play like that. It's not a good way to learn the game. I disagree. We already know for a fact that computers are way better than humans at playing chess. We should be striving to play more like the computers, actually, because they win more. But the reason why a lot of the conventional wisdom is to not follow what the computers do is because they're usually looking 10 to 15 moves in the future because of depth, right? And it's like you can't really think that far most of the time. You usually don't have that amount of time in a chess match to do that. You're usually timed. And so being able to think like 10, 15 moves ahead in the future is usually not possible. Another thing is that if you get too attached to your strategy, you also can't improve. You have to constantly test whether or not the wisdom you're following is true. At some point, I'm going to keep testing, well, is my double rubber strategy worth going for, or am I actually being less efficient than I could be? I will constantly experiment, try out new things. Sometimes I'll see an opportunity to go for like a different build. I'll try it. I'll see what happens, and I'll see how quickly I can make it happen. It's the reason why my flexing ability is one of the best out of a lot of players in North America. Theory crafting analysis. A lot of my improvement comes outside of the game. When I lose a game I expected to win, I'll sit down and I'll analyze why I lost. I actually did that with a game I had yesterday where it was Final 3 Areas. And Final 3 Areas is one of the hardest parts of the game because it's very difficult to make the correct decision there. You have to make a judgment call on how well your opponents are doing. And you have to decide, okay, am I going to play for Final Area? Am I going to try to pick a fight? And it's particularly annoying for me because a lot of people's Final 3 Area strategy is to make sure I lose at all costs. And so they fight me really, really hard. Hey, I just wanted to hop in since I was just watching some of your videos. I'm getting interested from playing a bunch of ERBS. ISBS seems very interesting, so I hope watching you can help me understand stuff better when I eventually try to pick it up as well. That's awesome, dude. Okay, I'm gonna stop this conversation in chat. So, people say that mobile works just as well as PC. I can't test this because I'm too used to hotkeys. The touchscreen is just foreign to me. You have to realize that me pressing a button on my keyboard is just as fast as me tapping somewhere on the screen. You can do it just as fast. You're just not used to it. The fact that you might think that you're moving slower is because, well, you may actually just be a slower player. Or B, your phone is not able to react as quickly because it is a weaker machine. Anyway, that's the end of that. Sometimes all Theorycraft specific starts outside of the game. This leads to the powerful double rubber start that I had mentioned before. Another thing is that I will test a lot of my Theorycrafts. And even if I come up with a start that isn't good, right, it gives me another option. I think a really good example of this is when I was testing out, I think it's called Plasma Whip, I believe. Yeah, Plasma Whip. Plasma Whip is not a good weapon to start with, like, at all, right? I had very little respect for this weapon for the longest time. The build path, the problem with it when you try to rush it from the start of the game is that it doesn't really overlap with armor. And what I found out the more that I built this was that what it does overlap with is a lot of stamina and food. And so what happened is I learned that Plasma Whip is a great weapon to go for if I need a second weapon. So I'm constantly testing my what I know about the game and finding out I was wrong. This weapon is not nearly as bad as I thought it was. There are situations where it's correct to go for. Another good example of when I go for this is like when I'm playing Barbara or another character where I am literally just sitting on a green weapon, or like maybe I'll sit on a high voltage line and I'll finish all my armor and then I'm like, okay, I don't know what weapon to go for. I can go for Plasma Whip because it's super quick. I can make stamina and food while I'm making it, and it keeps me super efficient. And I believe that is all for this. Does anyone have any questions?